Hello, it's Rich Emmett here from richemmett.com. Welcome back. In the last video we discussed claiming and registering your own domain name, which is like having the title deeds to your internet property. Now it's time to start building that property, and we're going to start by finding some firm foundations to build your internet property on. Your website and blog, like all of the other websites that you visit on the web, will reside on a web server. A web server is a particular kind of computer server. The web server serves your web page to visitors who type the domain name that you bought in the last video into their internet browser. Going back a few years, some people chose to host their own website on their own servers at home, and it is still technically possible to do that. However, the cost and complexity of doing that, coupled with the fact that you would need a very large amount of bandwidth on your local internet connection, means that, for our purposes at least, that just isn't a practical option. To obtain your own space on a web server, you need to use a web hosting service. Web hosting services often have large data centres where all of their computer servers are stored. They have engineers who look after the servers around the clock, customer support departments to help you out with any issues that you have, and so on. There are some good web hosts out there, and there are also some bad web hosts. You obviously need to make sure that you choose one of the good web hosts, since having a good web host may determine whether visitors are able to see your website at all. You definitely don't want to invest time and money into a website and then find that you're experiencing big problems because the web host is inadequate. I've used a number of web hosting services over the years, and yes, I have used some that have not been up to the standard, and it can cause some very big problems. I've also used some good, reliable hosts. So, which web host should you choose? Well, there are hundreds of web hosts out there, so I'm certainly not going to review them all right now. I'm just going to go ahead and provide my recommendation to you, and that recommendation is Bluehost. I've placed the link to Bluehost below, and I should say, because I'm entirely open in the way that I work, is that the link I've provided below is my affiliate link, meaning that if you click through on that link and then take the service, I receive a commission from Bluehost. All of the main web hosting companies, incidentally, offer an affiliate program, so the fact that this has an affiliate program certainly hasn't influenced my recommendation in any way. And it certainly won't cost you any more to click through the link. Indeed, at the time of making this video, there's a special offer on, meaning that you'll get a reduction from the service when you click through on the link below. These are the reasons why I recommend Bluehost. They have the resources that you need to succeed. One of the key things you need to look at with any web host is how much hosting space or storage you're provided with. If you take a look at the most basic plan with Bluehost, which is their shared hosting package, I'll explain more about what that means later, you can see that you get unlimited storage. The next most important thing to look for in your web host is the file transfer allowance you receive, and again, this is unlimited with Bluehost. So that's two big pluses for Bluehost straight away. Going back a few years, hosting was very expensive. Nowadays you can get this unlimited storage and unlimited bandwidth for under $10 a month. How can they afford to offer unlimited bandwidth and storage? Well, it's because 99.9% of users won't use a very high amount of resources at all. If you are someone who uses a lot, then they will accommodate that and put you on a high usage web server. So when it says it's unlimited, it really does mean that. There are other features to draw your attention to. There are unlimited emails offered in the package, which is important, and there's 24/7 support. The support with Bluehost is better from my experience than many of the other hosting companies, and again, particularly if you're new, it's good to know that there is someone there to assist you at all hours of the day. Another important issue is that they use cPanel. All of the sites that I host use cPanel, and I'd be very uncomfortable to recommend or indeed use a web host that didn't use cPanel. You'll see cPanel a little bit later on in this video. They also have a great script to very easily install WordPress onto your site in just a few clicks. And finally, it's affordable. Bluehost offers their packages at a great price, and why pay any more than you need to, right? So, which hosting plan should you use? And the most important question here is, how many websites you're going to launch. If you're planning on launching just one website, and making that website the best that it can be, then the basic hosting package is probably enough. If on the other hand you're planning on launching multiple websites, then your best option is probably to go with one of the more expensive options, starting with looking at the Pro option. Very briefly, a shared server is where your website will be hosted alongside a number of other websites in the same box or the same server. You'll have your own individual access and your own control panel, just like on the other servers. However, just be aware that there are other people on the same server as yours, and if they're getting a lot of traffic, that may affect the speed of delivery of your page at times. And there are also some potential security issues, although there are steps that you can take to protect yourself, even if you're on a shared server, and we'll be looking at those. At the other end of the scale is a dedicated server. Here, you rent the whole box of the whole server. That bit of hardware at the data center will have only your website or websites on it, and this means that it gives you the best performance and control. It's also, as you'd expect, very expensive, and I don't recommend that you get this type of server, at least initially until you have a very large business with very high traffic, and then you can think about it, although even then it may not be necessary for you. In between is a VPS, or a virtual private server. This is kind of set up to be like a dedicated server in its performance, although in terms of its architecture, and by that I mean the hardware in the data center where it's hosted, it isn't actually on one server like the dedicated server option. So it's a hybrid. It provides enhanced features over the shared servers, however it's not its own dedicated server. In actual fact, I do have a dedicated server due to the fact that I operate a lot of websites and the volume of traffic that I have on some of the sites, and also due to some features of some of the other sites I run for clients of mine. However, so I can demonstrate to you, today I'm going to sign up for the basic shared package that Bluehost offer, which is currently a $4.95 per month package. When I click through on Get Started, the first option is to choose whether to register a new domain or to use an existing domain. If you followed yesterday's video, then you'll have a domain name to put in there. If you haven't registered a domain name yet, then I wouldn't recommend that you register it here. Go and take a look at the previous video. There are good reasons for having your domain name provided by an independent domain name registrar. And that's definitely the way to go about it. I don't recommend you get a new domain name from Bluehost. I'll go ahead and put in my new domain name here. In fact, it's already auto-completing for me there, and I click through to next. And this screen here is where I put my billing details. I won't hold you up while I do that. I'll fill those in and take you straight to the next screen in a moment. However, there are two items on the screen that I do need to mention to you. The first is Site Backup Pro. Now, as we'll see in a later video, you can do your own backups absolutely free. I'll be showing you how to do that and how to automate it, so I don't recommend that you need this Site Backup Pro for $1.67 per month currently, so I would uncheck that box because you won't be needing that. However, SiteLock domain security is worth looking at. It effectively provides a logo, a bit like an SSL, although it's not quite the same as an SSL. So what's an SSL? Sometimes you might have noticed that when you're on a website, and particularly when you're going to pay for something, you might see a badge that's put there to give you a sense of security. VeriSign is a commonly recognised one, perhaps the most common one, and it's now operated by Symantec. Now, what companies like Symantec do is, to a greater or lesser extent, they check out both your business credentials and also your website security, and they issue a certificate. Then the person who's buying from you knows that they're getting the real deal. Well, SiteLock is intended to do a similar job at a much lower cost, and it's also faster and easier to obtain. The process isn't as rigorous, however they do verify your email and telephone number and your address, so the certificate does give your customers some confidence, and that therefore may lead to best conversions. So I think it's well worth considering for you, and I'm going to be getting the SiteLock certificate for my website. Once your billing has been processed, you get a confirmation, and the next job is to create your password. It will have to be a strong password. You can either use the password generator to generate a password for you, or put in your own password. I always prefer to put in my own. It's very important, of course, that you make a note somewhere safe of the password. There are various password safes that you can obtain where your passwords can be securely kept. You will need this to access the site, so it's important that you make a note of it. I'll just go ahead and put my password in now. And click create. You'll then be invited to put in the domain and password that you've just created. And log into your account. Okay, so once you're in your account area, the very first thing that we're going to look at before we look at anything else, the control panel or anything like that, is to link your domain name, which we obtained in the last video, to your website, so that once we have a website up and running, people can find your website by putting your domain name into their browser. So to do this, you click on Domains at the top of your screen, and you ought to see your domain name listed there. Now, if you can't see yours, perhaps because you missed that step out when you were registering, don't worry. You would just need to go to the assign a domain to your cPanel account, follow the instructions on that screen, and at the end of that process, your domain name would appear in the list. And incidentally, if you want to add more domain names to the same hosting account in the future, that's how you would go about it. Assuming that your domain name is in the list, you're next going to click on the Name Servers tab. And this provides you with a brief summary, and it also provides two options. Option A is to transfer the domain name to Bluehost. We're not going to go with that option for reasons that we've mentioned previously. It's better that we keep the domain with an independent company. Option 2 is configure the name server settings at the domain's current registrar to point to our name servers, and that's what we're going to be going with. The information which you see, so ns1.bluehost.com followed by some numbers, which are called the IP address, that information you're going to need. So either write it down or copy it into a notepad on your computer, because this is what's going to tell your domain registrar, GoDaddy if you use the same domain registrar as I used in the last video. It will tell your domain registrar where to point your name to. I've copied the information now and I'll paste that into my notepad, and you need to do the same. Once you have the domain name server information from Bluehost, then you need to go to your domain registrar and log in to your control panel. If you followed the last video, you'll be using GoDaddy. If you're using another domain name registrar, then there may be a similar process to this which you can copy. Failing that, then you can either go to Google to find out how the process works for your particular domain name registrar. You can put into Google something like how to point DNS, and then the name of your registrar, or failing that, your domain name registrar support should be able to show you how to do it. With GoDaddy, it's a very easy procedure. You simply click on Launch to go to your domains, and then you select the domain name that you're looking to point towards your website. Then you reach a screen that will give you various options, and you're looking here for name servers, and you click to manage the name servers. You'll see here that the default name servers are GoDaddy's own name servers, and we now want to change those to our Bluehost name servers that we made a note of. So we click on Custom, and then we click on the link with the option to enter custom name servers. The first name server was ns1.bluehost.com, and the second ns2.bluehost.com, and then we click OK. And that's all there is to it with GoDaddy. If you're with a different domain registrar, it may be that you need the numbers or IP addresses, and that's why I suggested to you that you copied those. However, with GoDaddy, the two name servers without the IP address is all that you need. So I click Save. The next thing to point out is that it can take anything from a couple of minutes right up to 48 hours for your domain name to propagate through the internet and to point properly to your Bluehost hosting account. It tends to be the case from my experience that .com addresses will propagate fairly quickly, whereas other addresses can be a bit slower. Unfortunately, there's nothing you can do to influence this, so if it takes 48 hours, then sorry, you've just been unlucky, and it'll be 48 hours before anyone can see your website using that domain address. That's not to say you can't carry on working with your website in the meantime, it's just that it won't be visible using your domain name. In order to check whether the domain name servers are pointing properly to Bluehost, you simply need to open up a web browser, type in the domain name address, and your web browser should then take you to a Bluehost parking screen. If you're still seeing a GoDaddy screen or your domain name registrar screen, then your domain name hasn't propagated yet. In my case, as you can see, I'm already seeing the Bluehost parking screen, which means that my domain name has propagated and is reaching my Bluehost account and cPanel OK. With the domain name now linked, I'm going to show you how to set up WordPress on your Bluehost account, and you'll be pleased to know that this is even easier to achieve than linking your domain name. Go back to your Bluehost control panel. You may need to log in again, and then click on Hosting. What you can see in hosting is called the cPanel. If you've got a different hosting company that uses cPanel, then you'll see something quite similar to this, although not necessarily exactly the same. It would normally be presented something like this though, with a small number of icons showing which services are available to you as the website administrator. Take some time after this video to look around the cPanel and familiarise yourself with some of the services that are available. We'll be looking at some more services as you need to include them, and in particular we'll be looking at creating some email addresses for your site in the next video. What we're interested in for now though is installing WordPress, and in Bluehost there's a very simple way of doing that. You can see that there's a WordPress icon. Now, in another hosting company you might not see this WordPress icon. If that's the case, then you're looking for something like simple scripts that you can see right here, or look around in your cPanel for Fantastico. If you have Fantastico, that will do the same thing as this. You just select Install WordPress from the Fantastico menu, and it will install WordPress very easily, like we're about to do here. So just go ahead here and click on WordPress. This will take you through to a screen that looks a little bit like this, and then you simply click Install. Installation may take a few moments. You'll then be taken to a screen which has a drop-down menu asking you to select which domain you would like to install to, and from that drop-down menu you would choose your domain name. There's nothing in the advanced options that you'll need, so simply click to say that you've read the terms and conditions and install. That will then take you through to a page which offers you many premium themes. I don't suggest that you buy any of these premium themes at the moment. We're going to be discussing themes in a later video, and eventually you'll receive confirmation. You can check it by viewing the process in the top right hand corner that the installation is done. Once the installation is complete, you'll receive an email which will contain some important information. It first of all, of course, contains the domain name where you can find the site. The second thing which is very important is your admin URL. This is where you're going to be able to add information and posts and change the site around. And then it's got your username and also details of your password, which will all be needed in order to edit the site and put content on there. Now that the WordPress is active on your website, you can test that by opening up an empty browser, putting the domain name in, and what you should now see is the WordPress blog that you've just installed. So rather than the Bluehost screen that we saw before, we now have your very own WordPress blog installed on the site. Now, in the next video, we're going to be doing a couple of things. We're first of all going to be setting up some emails which are based on your domain extension. And the second thing we're going to be doing is starting posting in WordPress. We're going to access the WordPress, start making posts, and also start looking around at some of the options that are available to make the WordPress blog look different. Until then, have a great day, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.